Welcome to Manga Machinations. This is episode 472, and we are reading Witches, the Complete Collection by Daisuke Igarashi. My name is Darfox8. I am not your regular host. Dagazu is your regular host, but he's still away. He's on assignment, visiting family. He'll be back next week if all things go well. But I am joined with the rest of the regular cast, including Morgana Santilli
Hey everybody.
and Seamus2389.
Hello.
Hey everybody, how is it going?
It's going.
It's going. I missed you guys. It's been a while since I've actually talked to either.
I know. Like 3 weeks?
Yeah.
How many weeks?
Yeah, it's been almost a month. Or actually, it might have been a month at this point. I mean, the audience has got me back because, I was actually on the podcast last week with Amber when we read the webtoons, which was pretty fun, very different. But I mean, I talked to you guys through chat, but because like Dogzu had to go and y'all were busy, so yeah, it's very nice to talk to y'all and reconnect. It's also very nice to be COVID free because I took a test a couple of days ago and it's finally out of my system apparently.
No, crazy. Do you know if you got that from the actual New York Comic Con or the flight or?
I assume it's the flight. I mean, it really could have fucking been anything, but like I assume it's the flight just because I was with my friends like 24/7. Well, not 7, but 24/4. And they didn't get it. Right. The only time we parted is when we got on the planes. That's when I was in a unique, different environment than there is for a prolonged period of time, where I could have very easily caught it then. So likely the plane really could be anything really though.
Planes and conventions are like two of the most disgusting places on the planet, and anytime I am in either, I get sick. So yeah.
Well, one of my friends did get sick, maybe from the convention, but also maybe on the Saturday is when we went to Chinatown to go meet up with Amber and have lunch at the Screen Bowl. That's where we met Exene as well. Listen to the podcast. I think we talked about this last week, but that day was raining and we were walking out in the rain. So I think that did him in. That gave him a regular cold, but he didn't get the actual Rona. I'm the only one who got it, so
Taking one for the team.
yeah. I was kind of surprised I got it because I hadn't got it yet, so I was kind of thinking I was immune or asymptomatic.
Nice try. Yeah, I haven't. Seamus, have you gotten COVID yet?
Yeah.
I haven't had it.
Year, maybe? Year before?
Dakazu's had it. I am the last woman standing here.
And it will stay that way.
To be fair, it's very possible I could have, I have a kid in preschool, in daycare. We have had so many illnesses, and I have taken tests, many COVID tests, and they've all come back negative. But I would not be shocked if I found out that I did actually have it at some point, like a very mild case or something, because I've never been sick so frequently in my life since I put my kid in daycare.
One of my friends, she's a single mom, and yeah, she's always talking about how he's just bringing stuff home to her all the time. Nice sick presents.
Yeah, on Wednesday, Wednesday afternoon, I was randomly not feeling great. I had a slight fever for like 2 hours, and then it went away. It was just like, oh, hi, here we are, drive-by fever. Like, cool, thanks.
That's fun. Just to make you feel alive.
Yep, mm-hmm.
Well, anyways, enough of our sick talk. We are Manga Machinations, and we are essentially a book club for manga. We read a lot of manga on here, and sometimes we switch it up and we watch movies or anime or, like last week we actually talked about webtoons. Primarily, it was Korean comics. But over the years, we've read so much manga, and we really go pretty deep. And this week we are reading Witches, the Complete Collection. This is by Daisuke Igarashi, and we will talk in depth about it in our main segment. But for now, I just want to mention that we are streaming live on youtube.com/darf no, not slash darfox8. um I'm not stealing the stream. It's youtube.com slash mangamactv. And one moment, I'm gonna switch my camera on now. Hey, it's me. It's the darfox8. If you're watching the stream, you can see me give the peace sign. We do have a couple people in chat. We have Lightning Bolt 72, friend of the podcast. He's been on the YouTube channel before, and he's making commentary about my COVID. And Tyler was here earlier. I hope Tyler's still here, but thank you all for joining. And thank you all for listening, whether you're watching on the stream or downloading the podcast like the classical method. But the first thing I want to do now that we switched over to the live stream is I want to thank our coffee supporters. We have a coffee. The coffee is ko-fi.com/mangamac. As I mentioned, we read a lot of manga on here, and pretty much every single thing we read on here, we have bought. Very rarely do we ever get review copies or gifted copies or anything like that. Over the years, we have spent a lot of money, and we do it because it's something that we want to do. But it really adds up, and any help people can give us is super, super appreciated. So on the screen, you see Deluid, Vicky Dalton, Mia, Dr. Meltface, Wyatt, Poor Mexican 72, no relation to Lightning Bolt 72. That can't be the same person, though. Philip, Liquid is 002, and Exene, who I just mentioned that we met over in New York. Some of these people have been repeat donators, very, very generous. They've really helped us out, and they've even funded some of our retrospectives completely, like I believe it was Doro Hedro, right? Which was pretty much completely crowdfunded retrospective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which was super exciting, and like the first time we did something like that, and it just made us feel all special and gooey inside. Hey, Tyler is here. Podcast just YouTube without many ad. Not sure what that means, but yeah, thank you. Oh wait, ads play during the YouTube live stream. I assume that's what he's saying. All right, well, we're not getting any of that money yet. All right, let me take this off screen. Back to me. So please consider, kicking us a few bucks if you listen to the podcast any amount of time. And if you can't, give us any money, consider sending us emails, tweeting at us, blue skying at us. Sometimes the feedback and the interaction, the engagement is as enriching as the cash. So consider doing that as well. All right, I think we are moving on. By the way, I'm looking at my cam right now, and boy, my room is a mess. I tried getting into because I still have boxes, because I'm not sure if people are super aware, but I recently moved like a few months ago, and I still have boxes in my closet. You see the closet door behind me, and I had boxes in the corner, and they were there because like once they're in boxes in the corner, they're like easily kind of handled. But once I open up the boxes and try to like actually put stuff away, then like the mess comes free, and suddenly like I can't do anything with this thing. But I'm working at it. I'm trying to actually I really want to actually have a cool room. There's a wall right here to my right that I want to have a corkboard where I could put various memorabilia I have of Hong Kong films. Bare walls, I want to put posters up. I lived in my last apartment like over 10 years, and I never put a poster up. I don't know if that's like I don't know if that's a sign of like a psychopath or something like that.
No, it's a sign that you're busy.
Well, it's just I don't think about it. I'm not months ago we were talking about like washing my hair and stuff like that, where like I never use conditioner. It's just one of those things where it's just a blind spot. I don't really think about like decorating that much, right? It's just
I mean, so I was gonna say we have. We moved in here like 3 years ago, and we still have boxes we haven't unpacked. I have framed some things, like while I was on maternity leave, I framed some things, and I still haven't put them up. So it's not like you're the only one. It's totally normal.
Yeah.
All that should be in your room is a place to sleep, desk, monitor, chair. That's it.
A bucket in the corner for my business.
Well, no, you can have an actual like bathroom in the place. Like we're not going that far. But otherwise, bare walls, nothing.
So I'm a big Metal Gear Solid fan. A lot of people know this about me. I'm just like a fanatic of those games. And American Star 2, one of the most beloved entries in that game, has a protagonist switch. It was a very controversial thing because the protagonist for Metal Gear was very cool, popular character named Snake, and then they switched them out for Raiden, which is kind of like a Bishonen. And back when it came out, American audiences really didn't have a frame of reference for what a Bishonen was. People probably said very homophobic things about like Raiden. And another like jarring thing about Raiden is that the way those games work is that you have, because you're a secret agent infiltrating a terrorist outpost, right? So you have radio contact with your CO, and there's a colorful cast of characters that you can call, and they could give you extra information. And it works as giving you backstory. It also works in giving you hints of what to do next in the video game. And the character you call to save your progress, when you want to save your progress in your game and turn it off, was actually Raiden's girlfriend, named Rose. And one of the things that people really hated about this game is that like Rose would essentially nag at Raiden and like ask him very girlfriend-like questions, like stereotypical girlfriend questions, where like, like, are you angry? It's like, no, I'm not angry. You're angry, aren't you? And they'd have these arguments, like these boyfriend-girlfriend arguments in the middle of this spy mission that people really hated back in the day. The reason why I'm telling all of this story, by the way, I love Raiden. Like, actually, I liked Raiden better when he was like the kind of like the Bishonen fuck up that he was in MGS2. Later on, they turned him into like a cool cyborg ninja. They basically badassed him, but I think it's kind of lame. He's still a good character, and there's still good games involving him, but like it's kind of lame. The only reason they did that is because he had such a negative reaction, and they're like, oh, people didn't like Raiden. Well, let's make him cool now instead of like a pretty boy. And it's just a really boneheaded, in my opinion, like decision to like backtrack this good character they made. He was just completely different from Snake, who was a Snake Plissken ripoff. Yeah, exactly. He was macho. He was a ripoff of like Kurt Russell, basically. Mm-hmm. But the whole reason I bring this up, I'm so sorry. This is what happens when Dawkins was not here. The whole reason I bring this up is because there's just one conversation that's one of my favorite conversations in the game, is when Rose starts kind of like poking at Raiden about like the fact that he's so cold. He's not a warm person. He's a pretty boy, but he's not like a really warm person. And he does love Rose, but he's not like super affectionate. And one of the things that she harped on was that she never saw his room. They dated for like 2 years, and she never saw where he slept. And one day she went into his room without his permission, and he snapped at her. He's like, "What are you doing in my room?" And he was like, and she said, I could almost quote this verbatim. She said, "It wasn't like the anger in your voice that scared me. It was your room. The walls were bare. There wasn't even a poster. All you had there was a..." It's exactly what Shayla said. All you had was a bed and a desk and a lamp or something. And she was just like devastated that she saw this room that was a reflection of like Raiden's like cold heart, like cold empty heart, who doesn't have the capacity for like intimacy and affection. And then Raiden snacks back. He's like, "Would you like it better if I had a picture of you?" And she's like, "That's not what I'm saying." And it's like, "Whatever. I gotta get back to the mission. Bye." Metal Gear is like the best video game ever. It really is.
So if you're playing Manga Mac Bingo at home, Metal Gear, Kojima.
Yeah, Metal Gear, Kojima talks about our cold dead hearts and our bare walls. You don't see any pictures. You don't see any posters or pictures of a girlfriend on these walls. It's empty over here.
It would be weird.
I was thinking, so tonight is like the first time we're recording where my son is already asleep. I've been like taking him recording with him, but he's actually down. And I was like, oh, now that like he's going to bed at like a regular time, I could get a webcam and also be on the stream. And then I'm looking around my office, like, what are people gonna think? But I actually, behind this desk, I just have a whole bunch of manga on bookshelves. So I'm like, this is actually great. This is
Nice.
perfect.
Yes.
And like the desk that I work at is behind me too. I'm sitting at a different desk, but
Please consider it. I want a webcam buddy on the podcast.
yeah, I would have done it sooner, but I didn't really want the baby on the stream, and also like sometimes I nurse him while we're talking.
Oh yeah. No, yeah.
I don't think
I think
YouTube needs to see that.
I think you're good. Anybody
yeah.
who wants to see it doesn't deserve it, and yeah, anybody who doesn't want to see it, yeah, that makes total sense.
It's so funny. I have no qualms anymore about breastfeeding in public. It doesn't. This is my second kid. I'm like, whatever, fuck it. Everybody's seen my tits at this point. But for some reason, the act of doing it on camera in front of a computer is like, I feel like I'm making a conscious choice that I'm uncomfortable with.
Right. No, it makes sense. I think, I mean, sitting in front of a camera, I'll speak for myself. Sitting in front of a camera and speaking is already kind of like a very uncomfortable thing. I usually have to work up my courage to do it because it's just unnatural for me. And I'm adding to that like a whole other layer of intimacy and just like body stuff. I could just, yeah.
Yeah. No.
I actually can't imagine, but yeah.
It's a weird thing to navigate because sometimes I work from home and the baby's home with me too, and so sometimes I'm in a meeting and I gotta feed the baby, and I just turn off my camera and just awkwardly kind of like, here I am, I'm talking to you and you don't know that I'm exposed.
All right. Well, we kind of had two chit chat sections because I really want to talk about Metal Gear, but let's move on to our first segment of the podcast, which is what you've been reading or watching or playing. In that case, Morgana, have you read or watched anything recently?
No, not really. My husband and I are watching Spy Family, the new season. We're behind a little bit, but that is enjoyable. I wanted to talk about, I was saying this a little bit off air earlier, but my daughter last night, so on Friday nights we let her watch a movie, like a new movie. We pick something new. She's 3.5 and she has very distinguished tastes for she really likes stop motion film. So I think I've talked about like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. She's really into that. She's also into like all the Studio Leica films, so like Coraline, Paranorman, Box Trolls. She's seen all of them. And last night I'm looking on Letterboxd and I'm scrolling through the things I've watched to see if I could find another good movie for her. And she goes, "What's that?" And she points to the cover of 1922 Nosferatu. So we watched the trailer. I'm like, this is not gonna be anything. We watched the trailer. I'm like, oh, it's a vampire, and she was so into it. She wanted to watch the trailer again and again. And I'm like, are you sure we could there are other movies. She's like, he's a vampire. He's my friend. She goes.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't think anybody could ever deny that that's your daughter.
Right? Yeah, I know. My sister-in-law goes, well, at least we know she wasn't switched at the hospital.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so last night she watched like the first half of Nosferatu, and my husband and I are like, we watched it for the first time a few years ago, and it was hard for us to get. It's a silent film from 1922. It's cool. It's really good. But it's also like, you kind of have to prepare yourself to watch that kind of movie. You have to like give yourself context, I guess, because you've seen so many modern films. She's watching the second half of it right now. She had to go to bed last night, so she couldn't finish watching it. But she's like so into this damn vampire, and anytime he's not on screen, she wants to know where the vampire is. At one point, she asked me if he was taking a shower, like just like the levels of like. I don't know, guys. I think I gave birth to a cinephile and I don't know what to do.
That's good.
Yeah. So, any suggestions for like things to show 3-year-olds that aren't too scary but also feed her desire to watch scary movies? Please send them my way.
Well, you might as well try the Universal like monster movies.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I also kind of wanted to show her like Beetlejuice. There are a few things I'm like trying to decide if they're a little bit more mature, but I'm trying to decide like what's the line that I'm willing to, like. She's seen Addams Family; those are PG-13.
Right.
I think Beetlejuice would be okay. But
Yeah.
my husband was like, I kind of actually want to try scaring her because she doesn't get scared. We're like, what can we show her that's like actually scary?
Yeah. She's too comfortable with the aesthetic. Like, all right, let's actually show you something messed up. We'll see.
But then I
Oh
don't want
gosh.
to deal with the fallout. I don't want to deal with the fallout. We were just got she likes the Ghibli films too, and I was like, oh, Princess Mononoke is like really violent though. Like I don't know if I'm ready to show her that one. It like opens. I remember watching that one. I was like I don't know 10 or something. I had seen Kiki and I had seen Totoro, and I was like, oh, this is by the same guy. And like Princess Mononoke opens with Ashitaka like shooting off somebody's arms with an arrow,
Yeah.
and I was like, fuck, this is not like Totoro.
No, yeah. It definitely has a few gnarly scenes, and even just like the creature designs and stuff. It's like they
hmm
either look like realistic animals or like the whole like tentacle stuff. It's pretty like gnarly.
I think she'd really like it. She really likes. She likes
Yeah.
that shit.
Yeah, it's cool. But
Yeah.
this is a little bit of a callback to what we're talking about. LB mentioned that there are some programs that I guess some schools use where the host can't turn on your camera if you turned it off. I guess it's just to make sure kids aren't sleeping or something like that. It is pretty invasive.
Super invasive.
Yeah, you think they did find another way where like, hey, if a kid had his camera turned off for the whole class, you can reprimand them or ask them what's happening, but like
Yeah.
just
Also,
switching
like,
it back on, like, well, you never know.
right? There's also like part of me that's just like, just let the kids sleep. I don't like that's their business. Like if they fail, they fail. You know, like I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, you know, follow up if you're concerned, but like, don't don't do that in the middle of class. Like, just leave them alone.
he also mentioned the Descent. Morgana, you seen the Descent?
No, but I can. Is this one?
That's the spelunking one.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
yeah,
I will not watch that. I will not sit with my daughter and watch. She will probably not care. I will be scared.
yeah. No, that movie it's pretty hardcore because I mean, like, it's pretty spooky with the underground monster stuff, but really, it's just like the claustrophobia
Yeah,
of
no, the
the
monsters don't bother me.
yeah,
It's not the monsters. It's the whole concept of spelunking as is like. I'm getting nervous just thinking about it.
yeah. It's a that movie, in my opinion, it has to be like top five spooky movie. Just like it really is unsettling. It's a good one if you want to have those feelings. uh,
Never.
uh,
No.
um, is
Tyler.
sorry, what was that?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I was thinking to say Tyler says the Universal monster films. And the Munsters, which is actually a good idea. We haven't tried the Munsters. She'd like that. She does not like the Addams Family sitcom from the 60s. Which is funny because I was like, oh, maybe because it's black and white, whatever. But like, she's watching Nosferatu, so
Right.
I don't know. I think it's just not as. It's not what she's used to with Addams Family. She watched the movies first, so.
Cool. Cool. Anything else besides baby movie update?
No, that's my life these days. I'm watching a lot of like weird kids horror stuff, and oh no, you know what I watched? James and I watched Renfield.
Oh, is
It's
that the Nick Cage one?
Nick Cage one, yes. Where
Okay.
and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I had never considered how much Nick Cage looks like Bela Lugosi until they dressed him up like. So in the film, they actually recreate the Universal Dracula film with Nicolas Cage and was it Nick Holt is the other actor's name. So they recreate that whole thing, and I'm like, wow, he actually really looks like Bela Lugosi. He's doing a good job.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big Nick Cage fan, but there's actually a lot of recent Nick Cage movies that I've missed. There's like the one that's what's it, like, the unbearable weight of talent or something like that. It's like a metal movie, that's like where he plays Nicolas Cage and Renfield.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's kind of had like a resurgence in the last like 5 or so years, where he's been in a lot of like interesting projects. And haven't seen
Yeah,
a lot of them.
I realize that I haven't seen that many films with him before. So aside from Renfield, I'd seen National Treasure because everybody's seen National
Yeah,
Treasure.
well, I actually like National
Um,
Treasure. It's a fun movie.
it is fun, and then I've seen stuff that he's done like voice work in. I've seen like the Spider-Man
Spider Verse.
into Spider Verse. He's noir Spider Noir Spider-Man, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I don't think I've seen again some voice stuff, but I haven't seen him in like anything. Just National Treasure and Renfield.
Yeah, Lanny Boat mentioned The Color of Outer Space, which we watched together. And that movie was pretty fun. It's not like the best movie, but it's pretty fun. Nicolas Cage has a weird impression in that movie where he's like, his daughter is kind of like a pagan, like pseudo witch. You know, like she's into like pagan stuff. Connects to what we're going to talk about later. So like there was a part in the movie where he snaps at her and he starts going like oh he's just like imitating her imitating like a teenager, but it was such a weird impression. He sounded like he was doing a Donald Trump impression, and it just killed us. Yeah, he was like, oh, you know what, like I'm gonna go do this, and I was like, is that Donald Trump or is he doing as a teenager? Like I can't tell. Maybe that says something about Donald Trump, but like another movie that he did recently or in the last few years was Maddie, which is like this weird horror action movie. That one was really, I like that one a lot. It's just very weird. It's those kind of movies that play with tone a lot, where one moment it's like funny, the other moment it's like horrific and sad. And it just has like a really good aesthetic. Hey, Christopher Canada's here. Say hi for a few minutes. Sorry you can't stick around, but thank you for saying hi. Yeah, like he has like a I mean Nicolas Cage is famous for having a type of kind of crazy kind of performance, but I do think he has like good range. I do think he has like actual talent. He's a lot of
Oh
fun to
yeah,
watch.
yeah. I mean, again, even just a few things I've seen him in, I've enjoyed him. He seems like a very strange person.
Yeah,
I,
yes.
I am, by the way, connecting my watching of Renfield and Nosferatu to the fact that that we read that Dracula book like a few weeks ago. It's all related, I promise. This is this is not just a complete. It's
Actual
totally,
manga mat content right now.
No, it's absolutely a tangent. I just like vampires.
Cool. Seamus, you got anything? And really, it could be literally anything. We're literally talking about anything right
We're
now.
filling time.
No, I started reading Land of the Illustrious, but wait for Doctor to come back.
Oh yeah.
That's fair, yeah.
While you were away, Darfox, they made me take off my headphones so they could talk about Land of the
I
Lustrous.
know. I actually listened to that episode and I actually heard the spoilers, so I.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should. Now that I think about it, I should have remained in solidarity with spoiler-free Morgana. But
It's fine.
I heard the whole sordid tale, and that book does sound like it goes places. It's definitely it's definitely not like a paint by the numbers type story. It's very interesting.
Last to get COVID, last to read Land of the Lustrous.
Last
last on the podcast.
Yeah, I haven't read, so we will read that one day, and I look forward to it a lot. It sounds pretty good. Ooh, random Land Illustrious connection. I guess yesterday or maybe before yesterday was the 10th anniversary of Steven Universe. I only bring it up because we're going all in on tangents, and also we've talked about it on the podcast a couple times because Dogzu and I are pretty big fans. We like that show. And Land Illustrious has like a lot of similarities to Steven Universe, where the gems are like kind of genderless, but they kind of present female a lot of times, but specifically they are not female or exclusively female. And there's this whole idea of immortality of the gems, or maybe reincarnations. The gems could die but maybe come back and stuff like that. There's a lot of similarities to it, and I wonder how that came about. But yeah, just random tidbit. 10-year anniversary of Steven Universe.
Wow.
Kind of crazy. It's been a decade.
Yeah. Man, a decade ago, I was like a different human.
Yeah, thinking about it, yeah.
Oh.
And that was better. But it's all downhill from there. I was just,
No. I never want to be 23 again. Fuck that.
yeah. Okay, we can move on to what I've been doing, and surprise, another tangent. Um, I haven't been reading much. I'm always watching stuff, but the only thing I want to talk about is um, Alan Wake 2. It's a new game that came out recently, um, and it's by Remedy, which is one of my favorite game developers. They made Max Payne and then Quantum Break for Xbox, and Alan Wake, which is also an Xbox game back in the day. Alan Wake 2 is one of those situations where it's a surprise sequel because Alan Wake it wasn't a flop, but it's one of those games that became a cult classic more than anything. It wasn't super successful, and it was a game, a sequel that they try and got out to get off the ground multiple times, and it always failed to get funding and stuff. So this is many years later, like more than a decade later, they're finally trying to make Alan Wake 2. And the interesting thing about Alan Wake 2 is that it comes after Control, which is the last game they made, the last big game they made. And Control was pretty successful, and it was a really fun idea, because the whole idea with Control is that you're basically playing an agent of the Federal Bureau of Control, which is kind of like an X-Files type situation, where it's a government organization that investigates supernatural stuff. But it's actually kind of similar to Chainsaw Man, to tie it into very weakly into manga, where Chainsaw Man has devils come into being and get power depending on the public's fear of this devil or the subject matter this devil is based on. In Control, it isn't as simple as like, oh, this ghost, we gotta find this ghost, or there's a monster in the woods, we gotta find the monster in the woods. It's more like the American or the public psyche help contribute to the creation of things. And sometimes there's objects of power that are created, and they represent kind of like the public's perception of what that object is, and it imbues it power and it becomes dangerous. And there's altered world events where something freaky happens somewhere, and it's usually tied in somehow to like some sort of meta narrative about the psyche of the world. And the fun thing about Control is that you can find, like, because it takes place within the actual office of the Federal Bureau of Control that got taken over by like an evil force. So you're finding memos all over the place. And the fun thing about the writing is that the memos are written in very like plain office dialogue about very extraordinary things. So it's like, to whom it may concern, somebody misplaced the witch's broom. We need the witch's broom to make a ritual work. It's like, I told you the witch's broom has to be placed in shelf A. If it's not there, I'm going to contact the supervisor of shift B. And it's just like a very petty, like annoyed office memo. But instead of talking about like not refilling the toner, they're talking about like the witch's broom or something crazy supernatural like that. And that's, people liked Control quite a bit. And I'm happy they had a good success with Control, because I really felt like the writer Sam Lake was able to just cut loose and they created a world where like literally like any fiction could fit into it. Like this doesn't happen in the game, but the way the fiction works, you could find a memo in the game about like a Doc Brown who created a time machine, and suddenly it's a Back to the Future reference, and suddenly Back to the Future is tied into the universe of Control, because that's just kind of how the fiction in that game works. And because it's like that, they tied in the original Alan Wake game into the universe of Control, where this Bureau of Control was actually investigating the events of Alan Wake 1, which is already trippy and weird, because it's about like a writer writing things into existence, and there's a dark presence that kidnapped him and forced him to write the presence, gaining power so it could escape its prison and stuff like that. and he's trying to figure out he has like missing time. He's trying to remember what he wrote and how and how he could rewrite it so that it doesn't happen. So it's already kind of like a very out there trippy idea. But now it's part of this whole Control universe, which is this whole greater universe of all these supernatural things. So Alan Wake 2 is pretty exciting because it's just a sequel to like a beloved game. But I'm more excited because it's just like the next game in the Controlverse or whatever. And it has like really fun hooks. And I'm a big Max Payne fan. And so Chris just asked if Max Payne is in the same universe. Not exactly. He might be in an alternate universe. Max Payne character, he's just like a hard-boiled New York cop. And the really fun thing about Max Payne is that like he's written in very overwrought like noir dialogue, to the point where it's almost parody, where he's like oh, the rain slick New York looked like glistening diamonds on velvet, like stuff like that. It's just like really really flowery and overwrought and just meant to sound super hardcore and noir. So Alan Wake, he's a writer, and he has a character called Alex Casey, who's basically Alan Wake. So it's one of those situations where it's kind of meta. You don't know if it's just a reference to Alan Wake or if he actually created Alan Wake and he exists in a different universe as Alex Casey. But the fun thing about Alan Wake 2 is that there is a character called Alex Casey, and he's played by the same face actor who played Max Payne. But in this world, he's a fictional character who actually exists now as a real cop, as the FBI agent. So it's a very meta game. It's really like circular logic. It's really wraps into each other. So I really enjoy it. And I just want to talk about it for a minute. Y'all can breathe now.
It's over. Sounds really cool and weird and fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it's one of those games where the gameplay's good. I like the game. This is all of Remedy games. The gameplay's good. It's fun, but by far the best thing about it is kind of like the writing and the stories and the characters. They have this kind of like really fun energy to them, even when they're not that original. They're very like it's a very genre savvy. Sam Lake is very genre savvy, and he writes stuff that's very like genre oriented and kind of like meta, pokes fun at itself, doesn't take itself too seriously, but still managed to kind of like really draw you in and you really like it.
Last night I was watching my husband. He just started playing Disco Elysium.
Ooh, yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's hilarious. We just started at the beginning, and I don't know if have you played it.
I haven't. I've heard a lot about it though.
So you're given, you have like a narrator, and you're given prompts, right, to respond to certain things, and it's just really like dry and very like weird. I only watched him play a little. I don't know if he's played more since, but I was just like, what the hell is this? I will report back when I learn more about it, when he plays more. But yeah, it's very it's like you're a detective and you wake up and you don't remember anything because you've been on a bender, and you're kind of trying to remember who you are and why you're there and what you're looking for. So far he's just like interviewed one person, but yeah, it's bizarre. I was like, oh, it's a detective RPG. This sounds fun to like solve a mystery.
Yeah, I think that game was praised very well for having like pretty deep interactivity where the conversations aren't, because a lot of games have like dialogue trees, but they're very superficial. They're like one option progresses the story, and then the second option lets you give a little more lore, and that's all there is to it. But in Disco Elysium, it's actually like a more organic conversation, and it could go places depending on how you talk to the person and what you kind of give them, basically.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I mean, you're given like 4 or 5 options for answers. Like it's not just and you kind of like I didn't feel like the narrator or the, what was going on was trying to steer you to a certain answer at any point. You know what I mean? I feel like sometimes when you can choose dialogue, you're kind of being like coerced onto a certain path.
Yes, absolutely.
It didn't really seem that way. But yeah, no, I was reading the Wikipedia page on it. It's like won a bazillion awards and had like really excellent reviews on all the gaming sites. And we know that, like, I was like, that this is shocking to me that it's like done so, like, like,
Yeah.
the gamers all agree on something.
Yeah.
Like,
There was controversy about that game, and I shouldn't have brought it up because I probably can't quote it exactly, but I think the deal off of it was that there was like an ethical question because that game
Yeah.
allows you to be racist. That game allows you
Oh.
if you want to role play as a scumbag, it lets you be that detective. So I think people were questioning that. I from what I understand, the game actually provides consequences. Like within the game, there is almost like a karmic justice kind of thing written into it. Potentially, like I said, I haven't played it. I'm speaking second half off of people having hot takes about it. But I think that's a very interesting. It's a very interesting outcome when you're given the freedom of dialogue and the freedom to treat people certain ways, and maybe you're given the freedom to just be a piece of shit cop. You know what I'm saying? Which like I guess isn't that different from like in Grand Theft Auto, you could run over his old lady, but we're used to that.
Right.
That doesn't, we don't clutch our pearls for that because that video game has been out 20 years or whatever. It's just silly video game violence. We know it's inappropriate, but it's just stupid. It's whatever. But in the frame of a narrative as a character that you're playing, it kind of, I guess it's, I don't know if it was bothering people or it's people are just thinking about it or talking about it more because it's interesting. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, like, there's the part of me that's like, yeah, that's pretty bad, it's pretty gnarly, and then there's the part of me that's like, well, I'd kind of rather you role play it in like a safe environment than like live it in your life. But then there's the question of like, how much does what you do in your free time influence how you act in your,
Right, or what audience it could attract, that kind of thing.
Right.
But like I said, I think by all accounts the game really doesn't like encourage it in any way. It's just something that's part of it. Yeah, I'd be interested if y'all play more. I'd be interested to see if you come across some of that, like really just ethical situations.
There are no good cops.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. I still have a cough. When Amber had COVID, she said that she had a cough for like a month after that or more. So I'm not happy about that. But people watching the stream could hear my cough sometimes. I'm not pushy talking on the podcast, so bonus content for the stream watchers, you get to hear the cough. The podcasters won't be hearing the cough usually. But those are things out there for the live viewers, right? I do have one thing that I could talk about. It's actually Manga Mac related. But I mentioned it last week, so I'll just talk about it very briefly. I'm up to episode 2 of Pluto, the new anime based on Naoki Urasawa's manga. Yeah, it came out last week, I think, on Netflix. That's a good show. It's very slick. It's very pretty. The CGI is used in a way. It reminds me a lot of like shows from the early and mid 2000s, where sometimes the environment is 3D, but the character is still 2D.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. I remember.
Yeah, like stuff like that. But it doesn't always do it. It doesn't like overdo it. It's just sometimes it has like these big sweeping rotating shots where like, okay, that's interesting. The characters are all 2D animated and they look pretty slick. It's a pretty colorful show. I guess manga is obviously black and white. But I didn't usually picture Gesik's like jacket as like a bright brown color. I'm colorblind, so I'm not exactly sure what color. It might be orange for all I know. But
Did
like,
I know you were colorblind? Have we had this conversation?
yeah,
before?
probably. I mentioned it. I can't shut up about it. I'm like, I'm so cursed. My life to be colorblind. I'm half a
Oh,
human.
we have had this conversation because I think I told you my advisor in college, he's an artist. He's colorblind.
Oh yes, and he kind of
Yeah.
got over it. He worked through it.
Yeah, I think he uses a lot of like texture to determine color and things like that too, like with certain media. But
Yeah. So Pluto, if you could stomach um the fucked up politics of it, which we talked a lot about in our recent retrospective redux.
Very timely, actually, for what's happening now in the Middle East.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I look
So
forward to Urasawa's manga on that. I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will be insensitive for both sides. So, the anime is very accurate to the manga, and it's hour long episodes. So it's only eight episodes. So it kind of feels like you go through a whole volume by watching one episode. It feels pretty dense. And they've given good time to the North number two section with the piano and all that stuff. They gave that like whole half episode, and they made that part kind of resonate. And then minor spoilers for episode two. Brando, you remember the wrestling robot who had a family, a big family. That scene is covered where he fights Pluto and he dies. He thinks he takes him out, but he dies as well. And he has that scene where he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna send you the data that I got on Pluto. Wait, I'm sending you my family. Why is this happening? It's not working." And he keeps sending pictures of his family as he's dying instead of sending data on the fight. Like those emotional beats that Naruto Urasawa winds us up so well and just sticks the knife and twists it in us. That's done very well in the anime. And that's what I was hoping for. The really positive stuff, the really the stuff that Naruto Urasawa really has a talent for. I think it's represented pretty well in the anime. So I think they did a good job as far as episode 2 of the anime is concerned. It's the same story, so it's gonna have the same problems with the whole like Persian War and the woe is me. I'm a soldier that went to go kill a bunch of babies. Please be sad for me. Monster Peace Theater strikes again since Dagazu. Isn't Dagazu like literally in midair? How is Dagazu in this chat? What's happening? Dagazu, are you
You can get Wi-Fi on a plane.
are you using the airplane's Wi-Fi right now? Oh, he just landed. Oh, he's doing a transfer. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, Pluto, and I go like this. As I say this, I'm covering my eyes so that I don't have to make eye contact with Seamus's square in the left corner of the screen. Pluto, highly recommend the anime. It's really good. Yeah.
I do want to check it out. I had forgotten that it came out. I was
This is one of those like difficult projects that the thing has been in development for a long time, and I think it might have been canceled a few times. So happy for the people making it that were finally were able to make it. Happy that it actually turned out pretty good, because you never know, it could still be bad. Excuse me, coughing. We sufficiently filled out the first segment, and we even talked about a tiny little bit of manga, if you could believe it. I promise you, normally we talk more manga, but this time we filled it out with video games and Nosferatu and who knows what else.
well. Dakazu's not here to talk about like 5 series that are not available in English.
Yeah,
So
he's not here to talk about the series about the cyclist who learned he really likes soba, and it's about like all the soba bars that he stops by while he's cycling. We can't hear about that manga. which I just invented, but probably it exists.
And Dakazu wants to read it.
Yeah, yes, it's good because you really just get the sense of like the soba noodles, dark jokes. Oh wait, is this for real? It doesn't exist. Okay.
Alas. As far as he knows. I mean,
Yeah,
you don't know everything, Dakazu. Just most things.
yeah, just most things. But that's the end of this first segment. We're going to move on to our main segment, which again we're reading, which is the complete omnibus. But before we do, I want to talk about what we're doing next week. So next week we are reading. It's a one shot, so it's a self-contained book by Poppy Pisuyama called "Until I Love Myself." It's going to be a pretty powerful book with a lot of serious subject matter. Poppy Pusuyama does. Speaking of Dagazu books, they do autobio work. Oh yes, it's so funny. Dagazu comes in as soon as I need him. It's the second volume of Until I Love Myself. It's not. I assume the first volume was named Until I Love Myself. It's not like a Nagatakabe situation where they just have like multiple volume ones. Yeah, we covered the first volume. So it's going to be a very heartfelt book, very difficult subject matter, but also very very well done if it's anything like the first one. So that's our reading for next week. So please look forward to that. I know I'm looking forward to it. And we're taking a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about witches. Okay? So stay tuned. My babies, don't go anywhere. Okay? This is how Dagazu. This is a weird outro, but this is how Dagazu does it. So I have to copy Dagazu. Okay, my little babies, my cute babies, don't go anywhere. Okay, bye. Welcome back to our main section of Manga Machinations, episode 472, where we read Witches, the complete collection. This is a book by Daisuke Igarashi, and I am going to start by reading the copy on the Seven Seas website. On a visit to a city in the far west of Asia, a British girl named Nicola falls in love. The object of her affection is Mimar, a man who works at the city's bazaar. Yet, despite her attempts, he turns her down. Upon returning home to England, the ache of her unrequited love festers. After years spent obtaining wealth, fame, and the secret of the world, Nicola returns to the bazaar to exact her deadly revenge upon Mimar and those he holds dear. This story is one of many in the haunting collection that features tales of witches and dark magic set around the globe and in outer space. Winner of the Excellence Prize at 2004 Japan Media Arts Festival, Witches is written and illustrated by Daisuke Igarashi, the critical acclaimed author of Children of the Sea. I guess that sets up the book okay. It kind of introduces the first story on there. But before we move on talking about it, I also want to get through some of the credits. So this collection that we read was translated by Catherine Hensler. Adaptation was handled by Jamal Joseph Jr. And the lettering was done by Aiden Clark. Who's that? I don't know who that is. There's also original cover design, Atsuhiro Yamamoto, and I guess this cover is designed by H. Key. I think that's how you pronounce that. That's where I stopped at. So, witches. Where to start with witches? 1 second, let me switch over to my screen. That's me. Yeah, so this is an anthology of stories, but they're all kind of the same universe. And it's kind of our world, but the witches are real. So it's kind of like an interesting blend of realism and fantasy. And sometimes I was actually, because I'm not I'm gonna guess Seamus got more out of this than I did because I'm very ignorant about history and like social stuff, social political stuff. But sometimes a lot of stuff was lost on me. It was like, what are they talking about here? This seems like some some serious history stuff. And then the crazy witches stuff happened, and I was like, okay, this stuff I get. This stuff I understand.
Well, I think at least in the first story, they're off. Unless this book is set in the year 3400, they got the date of Constantine off by about 600 years.
So would you call it? Would you call it an alternate our world history? It's just like it's kind of skewed.
No, I just think someone just fucked up along the way and didn't realize the last emperor of Constantinople died in the 1400s and not in 2000s. Like there wasn't even a Constantine in 2080. Never mind the last one. Technically, yes, it could be set in the year 3400.
Yeah, as we talk about this, I'm gonna switch over to the first image is just the first few pages of the book, just to show off just some of the detail of the art. The art in this book is pretty top notch. 1 second.
Yeah. Absolutely outstanding.
Because of the setting and because of the textile and like there's a rug here featured on the left side of the page. This kind of reminds me a little bit of a Bride Story.
Bride Story, yep.
Yes. The whole book doesn't really remind me of the Bride Story, but specifically this kind of setting. And the way these characters are drawn, and again, like the attention paid to the fabrics and stuff like that. But the first story that we were recapped sets up kind of like interesting dichotomy with the witches. The witches in this world are it's like they're kind of in tune with nature and kind of like the flow of reality and existence, and there's kind of like a narrative, especially with the character Nicola, who becomes like a very powerful witch, but comes at it from an angle of like, I have this power to manipulate anything that I want to do, and then she eventually learns that she doesn't truly have that power. She didn't actually know everything. And her plan kind of blows up in her face, essentially, or she stopped or whatever. And it kind of has like the witches are like very powerful and very free, but the wisest witches or the strongest witches in these stories are more like part of this grander system, and they kind of like see themselves not as like a super powerful evil queen or something, but almost just like almost like a wise shaman kind of thing, where they're like in tune with what the reality of the magic and all that stuff is.
This is like this is going to seem like a really weird connection for anybody who's familiar with it, but have either of you read any of Terry Pratchett's Discworld books?
Not I.
James, have you read any Discworld?
I think I read one probably like 20 years ago, so we'll say no.
Okay, because Terry Pratchett has these witch characters, and it's important to understand Terry Pratchett is like a fantasy author, British fantasy author. He's very much writes comedy, satire. It's a very different kind of fiction. However, his witches are also very much like their work is less about magic and more about understanding people and understanding what they call it in one of the character calls it is headology, basically psychology, where they have power, they have magical powers, but a lot of what they do isn't magic. It's just understanding people and how people work and how to manipulate people and how to manipulate circumstances. And weirdly, this book reminded this collection reminded me of that, especially Petrus Genitalis, which Dakazu had said he thought would be my favorite of the stories in here, and he was correct. Very much correct.
Was that the space one, or the one that starts in space?
Yeah, it starts in space, and it follows the young witch and her, like, you know, she's like an apprentice basically to, I think her name is Alicia, the other witch is Mira. And I'm a sucker for like the relationship between the two women, and like just kind of the way Mira approaches, you know, the church, and like the whole it really worked for me. It was also very strange. There's a lot of weird stuff, like they're talking about this stone, this reproductive stone, and I don't remember like seeing a stone at any point. I kept imagining that I was going to see like a giant phallus somewhere, like that was like, because that's what I mean. Petrus Genitalis literally means like genital rock. So I was like, okay, it's like an obelisk somewhere. It was very strange. The like premise was very strange, but I loved the interactions between the witches in this, and kind of the discussion of like, you need to, you know, you can't just read the books, right? Like you don't just have the words, you don't just have the magic, you know, you have to have an understanding, you have to have a deeper understanding of what the world is about if you want to, you know, be able to use magic, basically.
Another thing about this book, and I'm probably going to fumble through some of this stuff, so if anybody agrees or disagrees, feel free to jump in. But there's a lot of women, obviously, and a lot of like women bodies, and it has like that. It kind of rides that line of being like, these women bodies are powerful, for kind of like feminist reasons, but also just like very direct plot reasons, like in that story where the master takes upon the stone in their body to like to neutralize it, basically, right?
Yeah.
They use their body to stop it, almost like their body was like the weapon there. And there's the other stories where which is the one, I think it's the last story, but I can barely remember it. The woman, they're on the cruise, and there's that moment where she's like standing barefoot on the cruise, and she has like this connection to nature, and it kind of has this really interesting drawing where the hands are covering her whole body, and stuff like that. It has like the very thematic run through about women's body in this, that again isn't like super hot and sexy, even though there's a lot of I want to say a lot, but there is plenty of like naked ladies here and there in the book. But it's one of those books that not that they're drawn ugly or anything, but it's not a really sexy or an enticing kind of portrayal. It's more either it's empowering, or sometimes it is they're discovering. It's like they're having some sort of epiphany, and their bodies is part of it. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, especially you talked about Mira taking the stone into herself to neutralize it in that one story. And the thing that for me was very powerful about that is that she took it, so this is the reproductive stone, and she took it into her womb. She took it into her belly. And so it was very symbolic also of like motherhood and protection. You know, she talks about, she says to, because Alicia's like, why does it have to be you? Why do you have to do this? And she says, because you were worth protecting, because there are more people worth protecting than not. And it's such a like, I don't know. And you know, she's very much a mother figure to Alicia too. And it's like I don't know. And with my second child, I had a C-section. So looking at her like stumbling while holding her belly, I'm like, girl, same. Like, I feel that.
Oh no.
Yeah, no, it's like, you know, don't get pregnant, guys. Just don't, don't do it. But there was something very like empowering and also just like I don't know what the word is I'm gonna use, like grounding maybe, like just very like sobering about that, like the expectation of women to be mothers and the responsibility of like taking on the physical responsibility as well as the like emotional kind of like burden of it as well. We're calling it a burden is heavy, but you know what I mean. Like she has had to make a choice that is something that's very hard to make. She has to sacrifice herself for the betterment of others. And then becoming a witch, she has signed up for a certain amount of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually have that page on screen. It's kind of bloody, but it's not super gruesome. But yeah, like it's actually very well done, and I like the word sobering you used, because on the right side of the page you have kind of like I guess you could say it's almost like the badass um the badass drawing of her holding the wound and walking very purposefully, like almost like a badass. And then on the left side of the page, you have other people in the church, really tearing her down and demeaning her because even though she's like saving all their lives, and it's hard not to drop parallels about like, how 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 um how society or men can be easily grossed out by women bodies and some biological functions from women, and extremely judgmental, um, but
And the
still,
lack of understanding,
yeah,
like the lack of understanding of what that burden is like. And to be fair, a lot of women don't understand either. Like I don't think I understood a lot of the ramifications of the choice of motherhood, right? And I'm talking about motherhood here, kind of because this is akin to this talks about reproduction and stuff like that. But there's women's bodies and what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, how women should act, and Mira's just like fuck it. I'm gonna save you anyway, even though you don't deserve it, because that's my job.
yeah, and that distinction is very important because she's coming from it from such a enlightened perspective as like this is the right thing to do and this is what I'm going to do. It is she really isn't being put upon by any character to do this. um Meanwhile, like, again, the church and all the guys, they're like, oh, how indecent, and all the all this really silly stuff, which is probably super accurate. um
Yeah, another thing too, and again, I think part of the reason this particular story resonated with me so much was I was raised Catholic, so I'm accustomed to a lot of that kind of this is inappropriate, this is the right thing to do, this is the wrong thing to do, from the church. But then there's also the one, I think he's a bishop, who comes to Tamira for help, and he's very clearly, he appreciates what she not only appreciates but like is so grateful for what she's doing and understands that she's a good person and understands that she's making a huge sacrifice. And that dichotomy of the individual versus like the institution is such a real experience for me navigating, like, having been raised Catholic and things like that. Like there's so many good individual people, and you talk, who are enlightened, who do have a certain connection with their faith that feels genuine, right? And then you have the institution itself, which is very like, I don't know.
Compromised.
Yeah, and stayed, and doesn't really feel genuine. It feels like it has it's checking boxes a lot of the time. It was a really good, that story just really worked for me, especially that scene, that series of scenes of Mira like taking on that role.
Since we're on the story, I want to highlight a couple of the set pieces when the rock, the chaotic force or whatever, the evolutionary force was transforming the city. I have it on screen now. It's kind of grotesque, but it's also like pretty subtle compared to like like a Junji Ito book, which is like very grotesque and very in your face. But in here, you have like images of somebody's glasses melding with their ear and falling off. But it's not bloody. It's just kind of bizarre, where you see the glasses on the floor and the ear is like inside the glasses legs, and the legs of the glasses are turning into flowers, and it shows the buildings transforming and the lamppost becoming kind of like organic and stuff like that. Really freaky, really cool artwork. And I hate to say that like, oh, it's elevated or something like that. Like the whole idea of elevated horror I do think is a little silly. But it doesn't read to me just like a regular like grotesque like Junji Ito like 2-page spread. It's a little bit it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, throughout, I would say there's a lot of really gorgeous artwork, and one of the things I think is really interesting is that you do have a lot of detail in things like this, like a lot of in the tapestry from the first story. Also, there's a lot of detail, but then he also does this thing where he'll have characters like making like they're almost sketchy, like these like one-off like comedic faces, or like a panel where there's like something silly going on, and you're like that he can do all this lush incredible detail, but also that he's making a choice to like do something silly, and I really like that kind of balance that he plays with a little bit.
So we went pretty in depth, pretty quick to some of the stories, but I want to dial it back. And just say that I really like this book. It's the things about it I feel definitely went over my head a little bit, but I think it's definitely things that I can understand more if I reread it or if I think about it more. It's not a really confusing book. It's just kind of a book that's rich with a lot of ideas, and the settings are very very rich. But generally with the art coupled with some of the themes, I think it's a really good read, and I like it quite a bit. And Morgana, I think you liked it too, but I'll toss to you next and ask, just in general, how did you like the book?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, I really liked it. This worked for me. I enjoyed Children of the Sea when we read that. We read the first volume. But this works for me a whole lot more. I think it's just much more my bag, my kind of story,
Yeah.
my kinds of characters. Yeah, I think it's really excellent.
All right. What about you, Seamus? We haven't heard much from you because I haven't talked to you much. But how did you feel about the book in general?
I think I liked it overall, particularly like the art. I think he does like the big kind of, I don't know how you describe the panels, where it's like, a person is a larger part of like a world, or like the world is in a person. They're very well done. I think pretty much maybe not every story, but I think a lot of the longer ones kind of had like at least one scene like that. Or someone's been like, I don't know, soon isn't the right word. It's kind of like the tapestry. They're either a part of the tapestry or like they are the tapestry, depending on kind of how he wants to do it. I think what I like the most is the last one, actually, which is kind of like the least witchy, I think. I think that's maybe kind of why I liked it as well. it did not remind me of like reading. I don't know what was I reading there. Like going through Constantine, yeah, or Hellblazer.
The last one being like the really short one.
Oh no, sorry, the second last one. What's it about the girl
Hinata.
Hinata? Yes,
Yeah, Hinata. Yeah.
or Trip to the Island.
Yeah, I'm thumbing through it now, and I'm reminding myself about it. That one had like, yeah, that's one that it kind of went over my head a little bit. It kind of felt like a like a self destruction / reincarnation storyline. I'd be curious to have your take on it.
I think with the other ones, they were a bit more kind of like what I expect from this kind of stuff. Like, I don't know if you read like the run of like British comics people from like the 80s up until the 90s. I think a lot of them were into like New Age stuff, and like New Age stuff was quite influenced by this whole like world pattern or like women's magic and all this stuff. Now I'm reading it again and I'm like, it just feels like, oh yeah, this was from a date and a time. It's like that one was a bit more, I'm going to say quite metaphorical. It was like a very different take from the rest of them. The rest of them was like, oh, there's this thing happening in the world and we need to like deal with it. This one was more just like some people going on a trip and they met. And there was like an element of like magic with the island, and I think that the fact that it was nearly more a metaphor than like actual magic is what made it interesting there. But the actual magic stuff just is a bit like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. Like he does it very well in terms of like how it's drawn and all. But it's nothing particularly like new there. I feel a bit different.
This one again really had a lot of like, paid really close attention to the character's body, and there was a lot of interesting set pieces. I'm trying to find one.
Yeah, you mentioned the panel with where she's covered with hands.
Yeah, and here I'm putting on a one that's a little further on in that story, where her body's like raindrop ripples, and this kind of continues for like another 2-page spread, but I'll just keep it here. Yeah, like the whole body kind of transcending your physical form and kind of connecting to your environment and stuff like that. It's really well communicated in this book.
Well, I don't think it's the body transcending to physical form. It's like an awareness of like your physical form and greater physical thing. Like it's not like a spiritual thing. It's very much like rooted in the physical. It's not like the separation of like the physical and the spiritual. It's all like one. Doesn't involve the sea. I always like stuff involving the sea.
You know, it's funny, when I was reading this story in particular, I was like, I wonder if Seamus is gonna like this one. There's seas in it.
Now, if it had nighttime photography of apartment buildings, it would have been his favorite story of all time.
It's also kind of cynical. I feel like a little bit. They're all, I mean, none of these are, I wouldn't say any of these are like a really happy story, but this one felt the most kind of, maybe because it's a little bit modern too, where the other ones, even though they take place in a kind of modern world, a lot of the characters are a little bit like living off the grid, or like a little bit more like separate from the society. Whereas this one, you know, it's a teenage girl.
I think the other ones are also like more fantastical by their very nature. It's like there's this person doing this magic thing and we got to deal with it. This is not that.
Right.
And probably the very last one with the cat, where the girl is like just gonna go for the cat.
Yeah, that one was like a almost like an urban legend kind of thing. It was very self-contained and interesting. Have you seen the Witch or the Vivitch, the movie?
No, but I was just looking up the director because he's going. There's a Nosferatu film coming out next year.
Oh wow, it's
And
all
he's directing
connected, huh?
it. It's all connected. See, I told you this was relevant.
Yes, perfect. I don't want to spoil the Witch because I think you'd really like it. Update from Dog Zoo. Dog Zoo the crazy is sweating on this plane. He's sweating. I guess it's stuffy plane. Stuffy planes are rough.
Planes are the worst. Actually, planes don't bother me that much. Like air travel, I hate airports. They are. I don't. They are like the seventh circle of hell. They're
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah, it's also a crapshoot. Like you could have a relatively painless like TSA line, or you could have a TSA line that I had where it almost made me miss my flight because they kept on extending the line. I guess because the different checkpoints were going off to lunch or maybe their shift were ending. So every single time I'd get up to the part of the line where I turn and get into the last line where you take your shoes off and put the stuff in the bin, uh, they'd close that rope off and I had to keep walking down the line and extended my my TSA wait like an extra 40 or 50 minutes.
Thanks,
It
guys.
was the most nerve wracking thing. It's crapshoot. It's bad. That's where Dogs is up to now. Oh, Dogs is not having a great time at the airport. Secret content for the YouTube stream. Check out the YouTube stream and look at the chat replay. But yeah, I don't want to spoil the Vivitch because I think it's a movie that you'd probably enjoy, Morgana. Just fair warning, it's a very somber, slow movie. It's one of the movies that's like 90% mood.
Yeah, I haven't watched it because I haven't been able to gauge how much it will spike my anxiety. It's really like that one, and I actually wanted to watch The Lighthouse too, which is the same director. But both of them, I'm kind of like, what am I getting into? I'm really not sure.
Yeah, I guess the best way I could explain The Witch, it's a very dreadful movie in the sense that like it's kind of like it's about the ruination of a family. It's like a pilgrim family that something happened and they were excommunicated from the village. I think the father frames it in a way where he was following religion closer than the village, so everybody else was the heretic. But it was more ultimately it's more of a thing where like this father kind of failed to actually protect his family from repercussions in every way possible. And the mother doesn't help either. The father and mother have a very deteriorating relationship. So they're as a program family, not living in a village, living on their own out in the woods. So they don't have the protective membrane of the community, and they get basically preyed upon a witch in the woods. Um, but there is, and it's a movie that's very directly like these are witches and they are like in a coven with Satan kind of thing. It's like it's very non-ambiguous about the origin of these witches, right? But it has that aspect to it where it's like who's worse off, these witches free living their life or this miserable fucking family that hates each other.
Right, right.
So it also has that aspect that's kind of interesting and kind of critical of like traditional family roles. And terrible things do happen to the family, including like the young children.
Okay, so maybe not a right now movie.
Yeah, yes, yeah. That's why I kind of want to talk through it and kind of like tell you some of the things that, not tell you what happens, but tell you some of the type of things that happen. But I bring it up because the whole like empowering liberation aspect of it, it has a very interesting ending. It ends on a very interesting note that I really like. I think the movie's really good and it has a really good ending. But you could really interpret it. Oh, sorry, that was a cough. That meant to be exclusive for YouTube, but now the podcast has it too. Um, there's the ending could be interpreted as like a really bad ending, or like a kind of good ending, depending on your interpretation of it. So, not exactly like this book. This book is way less dreadful. It's overall a pretty positive story. It just has some kind of sad or tragic things in it. Um, but some of those themes reminded me of The Witch. So highly recommend if people haven't seen it. It's a good one. I guess is there any other stories in this collection that we want to talk about?
I do want to talk a little bit about. So there's the first story, which is Spindle,
Spindle, yeah.
and then I think it's the second one that takes place kind of in South America. It looked like where there's like a shaman.
Yes.
Okay, so both of those, something I thought was very interesting is we've decided to just go whole hog on the woman wants revenge trope, right? Or like Nicola, like she couldn't get the D, so she decided she was going to destroy everything, like
Right.
kill people, tear down the bazaar. Like it's like I didn't like her. I didn't buy her reasons, and like it was. I was just like so. I'm like, you're so petty and annoying, and like that's kind of the point, right? That's like, but I was like, oh, are these all gonna be like evil witches sort of thing? And then the next one, I can't remember what it was called. With the shaman, she's kind of like the last person left of her people because the West has come in and is like leveling the forest. And she does some like Princess Mononoke ass, like, look at these weird spirits coming to get you, you terrible colonizers, shit. So it's also revenge, but it's like a revenge I can get behind. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they probably deserve to die, but she doesn't make it. She does die, and the end of that one is real weird.
Yeah.
Real weird. Somebody orders like a burger, and she's like, she and the spirits are like underneath the bun.
The end of that one reminded me an awful lot of. Did you ever see Earth Girl Arjuna? It was like an anime from, I think, the early 2000s.
Earth Girl Juno, no.
No,
Earth Girl Arjuna. I think it was Earth Girl Arjuna, ARJUN. It has like a very unusual animation style. It's kind of like early 3D kind of stuff. It's like very. It kind of reminded me of this thing in general when they're on about, oh, we're all part of one thing. Because there's like a whole thing where her and her kind of boyfriend end up on a farm, and she's the ability. I think he maybe gets part of the ability to like see where food came from, and so like when she tries to eat meat, she like sees the animals, and basically just becomes a vegetarian. But that like whole thing of eating the burger and of Arjuna.
I've heard of that anime. I haven't seen it. I'm gonna have to like check it out now because it's one of them in my blind spot. But yeah, weird. It was a weird one, and I didn't entirely know how I felt about it at first. Like you know, we started out with like here are these people who live in a tribe, these indigenous people, and I'm like, oh no, is this gonna get like weird and racist? I don't really think it did. I think it was handled pretty well. But there's always the part of my mind that's like, how are we dealing with this? How is this gonna pan out? And she's like a shaman, and I'm like, oh, okay, but it's actually, I thought it was really interesting. And that's another situation where she's naked pretty much the whole time, and it's entirely non-sexual. Even like, and I'm gonna go back for a second to the panel we were talking about before with the character who has hands all over her body. I do think that like in a lot of contexts that would be seen as like a sensual thing.
Her body's getting caressed, quote unquote.
Right, and she's like a teenager too. It's like there's a whole lot of layers there, but it didn't feel invasive. It didn't feel like titillating. It felt emotional, right? It felt like, and same thing with the other scenes you were showing too, where she's kind of becoming one with all these raindrops or whatever. It's like very, yeah, like understanding the sense of place and like a grounding kind of sensation. It didn't feel like I was like somebody was trying to make me excited, right?
Right. The whole way that like she loses reminds me a lot of Pampoko, the Studio Ghibli film about the Tanuki.
Yes, I love Pampoko.
Which is like the whole film you're watching these Tanuki fight for their land and their forest, and at the end they just have to give up, and they live on, but just like kind of eke out a living amongst the humans. So it's a very bittersweet story where they're utterly defeated, but hey, some of them are still alive and they can live on and maybe hold on to a little sense of themselves. This is a lot more, a lot less bittersweet, and I guess just bitter.
yeah, it's pretty heavy.
And a little cheesy. I don't know if I'm being harsh by saying like it is the kind of metaphor that like I feel like an amateur artist will come up with, like, the burger is just like the indigenous people, bro. What are you doing? But like in the context of the story, it is actually like a very kind of horrific panel. She's literally pleading, please don't eat us.
Well, no, the burger is from the cattle that ate the remains of the people. That's the line of transmission.
Right. And then it has the little stick people running at the end. Wow.
It's a good collection. It's a kind of weird collection. It was very unexpected. I'm not sure what I was expecting. I know, Seamus, you said you're like, yeah, this is what I more or less expect from something called Witches, but in terms of the, like, that, those storytelling components, yes, but, like, I don't know, I feel like the artwork in Children of the Sea is excellent also, but for some reason, reading it here, it felt different. I really connected with it differently. Yeah, I think it's maybe just that it's my thing more, but like I love it. I love this little collection. I think this is like really great, and when it was announced or when we talked about doing, I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely want to read that. I want to check it out, and now I'm like, why didn't I like we were trying to decide between a few things to read for this episode, and I'm like, I'm glad we read this. I don't know why I didn't like demand it. You know what I mean? Like now in retrospect, I'm like, this is great.
Why you weren't a champion for this book?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure the other book we were also looking at great too. So probably could say the same thing, but I think we made the right choice this week. I think coming off of spooky season, we're coming down from the horror a little bit, but not like entirely. Like
Yes.
keeping the magic, keeping it alive.
A tinge of the horror, but more like a, I don't know, like a affirming book. It's not like last week where I read Killstagram, where like an Instagram influencer is getting stalked by like obsessed fans, and it just devolves into like the silliest storyline ever. And I kind of like Killstagram.
You should watch. Was it Spree? I think about the serial killer who like live streams it all to get famous.
Spree.
He's like an Uber driver, and he tricks out the car with a lot of cameras, and he's like going to like kill a lot of people on stream, and that way, like he'll get famous.
That does sound like a bad but good time.
And the whole thing, it's like a kind of found footage, because like all the footage is from one of the cameras he has or that
Right.
other people have. There's a very good bit where it's like, there's a whole bit at the start where like he's clearly like, there's like a montage of him like doing like popular YouTube video stuff, trying to get popular, and with, I think it's YouTube. And it's like, no, it clearly has no effects. It's like, fuck it, we'll kill people, and that actually doesn't even help him. I think like because no one watches his streams, so like no one's actually watching him murder people or believe it's real either. For a while.
Damn relatable.
We are not going to start streaming murder. Pretty sure that's against YouTube's terms of service.
Yeah.
I hope it is.
Yeah, harm, self-harm, that kind of stuff is definitely against. Well, you mentioned your favorite story, Morgana, was Pretra Genitalics. And Thief of Songs was your favorite story, Seamus.
Yes.
I think mine was also Petra Genitalics. I think that had the most stuff in it. It was kind of like the richest story, I felt like, as far as like it had the most intrigue, and it had like that relationship between the master and apprentice. And it really, I like the way it played with the art, even outside of the scenes where it did like crazy set pieces. There's that one scene when what's the name of the woman who took the stone upon her?
Mira.
Okay, yeah. There's that one scene where she's explaining and talking to like the church, and there's a scene where like the way she's drawn is that like her silhouette is drawn, but none of the detail in her clothes is drawn. I don't know if that technique has a name, but all you see is her silhouette and like her face. Her face is the only thing that has any detail in it. And I was like, damn, that's stylish. There's just like a lot of really good art and really well done stuff. I mean, we didn't really even mention it, but in the Cal Rupu story, the one that ends with the hamburger, that one had a lot of weird like animal body horror, animal human hybrid stuff.
Yes, yeah.
It just really plays around a lot with kind of the limits of like the bodies and kind of your perception. But even when it's not doing that really crazy stuff, it looks interesting. It looks hot. Yeah, I really like it. I think we're gonna wrap up. Is there anything else you want to mention about this, Morgana?
I recommend it. I think it's a really cool little anthology, and if you like really good art, if you like weird kind of I don't know. I don't want to call it like. I don't know. I don't know how to explain. Not indie, but like kind of offbeat, I guess. Um, Manga stories like this is some good stuff. Oh, you're showing the page with all the harpies. So gorgeous.
Yeah, I was debating showing any more pages because I think I've shown like the most pages of this book than I have any book ever. You know, I try. I try to strike a balance because we don't want to show too much and get in trouble. Obviously, this is a product that you should go out there and buy, and we don't want to give it away in the stream. But I think this page spread is really really cool, especially since if you notice in the bottom of the screen, the characters are sitting on like the hillside. It's small on the screen, but they're like watching the star sky, and the harpies are like holding up the planets. Almost, I guess the analogy is that like Mirror was holding up the planets. Yeah, sorry, did I interrupt you, or were you done?
No, I think I'm done. Yeah, it's great. It's gorgeous. It's fun. I don't see any drawbacks to reading this collection.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. Seamus, any last words?
No, not really. Like I think kind of like kind of agree with Morgana and there. Like the art is incredible. Tifa songs one, yeah, that was like no, I'm coughing. That was definitely the standout one for me.
All right, and with that, we will complete our talk on Witches, the complete collection by Daisuke Igarashi. Reminder: next week we are reading Volume 2 of Passion Poppies, Until I Love Myself. Reminder again, it's a story that deals with a lot of heavy subject matter. We'll probably give content warnings during the episode right before we talk about stuff. Just quick vague content warnings because it deals with real life situations, and some of them are very harrowing and kind of sad. So stay tuned for that. We'd love for you to come back next week, especially if you actually read the book and you have opinions about it. But that's next week. Until I Love Myself by Passion Poppy. If you like this podcast, we do this every single week. And almost every single week we stream this. We stream it on youtube.com/MangaMacTV. And we have our podcast on Spotify. It's on our RSS feed. Just look for Manga Machinations. You can find us. We are all over social media. We have a Twitter. We have a Blue Sky. We have an Instagram. And we have a Threads. All of these have the same handle. It's at Manga Mac Podcast. So whatever social media you're on, pop on there and try and find us, follow us. Like I said in the beginning when I was talking about the coffee, even if you can't kick us a few dollars, sending us reviews or emails or interacting with us invigorates us almost as much as money, and sometimes even more so. That's all for today. Thank you for spending time with us. I love you, and bye bye, my cute little babies. Bye byes. Have a nice day, my babies. Bye bye.